Welcome to the Healing Sexual Trauma Summit. I am Marcy Little, your host, and with me today we have Mitlé Southey. Did I say your name right?
Absolutely, thank you.
Oh, thank goodness. Okay. That's like always the first hurdle, you know? And also really important, so I'm glad. Okay. Before I tell you more about all the wonderful work that Mitlé does, we'll just take a moment to get present. So whatever you do, you can do that. Like if moving your body for a moment or just shaking something out. I tend to like to exhale with a lot of sound. I love that Mitlé's got her hand on her heart. It's beautiful. And maybe you want to close your eyes. For some people, closing their eyes doesn't work. So if that doesn't work for you, keep them open. See if you can make contact with your feet on the ground. And then just letting yourself get as present as you can. Be feeling your body in contact with whatever you're seated on. And then even noticing the rise and fall of your own chest or rib cage or belly. Good. And when you're ready, you can come on back. And you can feel free to pause this video at any time if you're feeling overwhelmed, if you just need a break, if your body's like, whatever it is. So Mitlé Southey, so great to have you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm going to just tell you a little bit about Mitlé, which is why I put my glasses on. So Mitlé is going to talk to us today about the medicine of circles. And Mitlé guides and supports wild-hearted folk to remember the ancient practice of circles and reimagine them to hold transformational gatherings for their clients and communities in these times. She's a circle holder, inspired EFT practitioner, and former lawyer who brings a unique blend of the practical, ethical, and mystical to remembering the ancient tradition of gathering in circle and co-creating a modern movement of circle holders. Mitlé is dedicated to social justice, equity, and intersectional feminism, and founded Circle School to help others to hold powerful, inclusive, and accessible gatherings online and in person. Her vision is that circles are embraced by organizations, businesses, institutions, and governments as potent cauldrons for communication, connection, collaboration, co-creation, ceremony, change, and circular leadership. She is a sought-after guest teacher on holding space and women's circles, and that is why I invited her to be here today. Welcome, Mitlé. Is there anything more you want us to know about you?
Oh my goodness, thank you. It's an absolute joy to be here. It's always an interesting moment, isn't it, to hear your bio, hear that introduction, remind yourself who you are.
Exactly. It's like, wow, I do this, and this is my intention for sure.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think just in terms of my circle work, one of the things that I tend to share and say a lot is that circles, and for me, this has been my experience, that circles aren't something we do, but that they are who we are. So everything that I speak about is really held in that context. And my own personal journey with circles found me, and I'm so incredibly glad that they did. My first circle that I attended, I was pregnant. It was a birthing circle. It was a red tent circle, part of the red tent movement. And I'd never experienced a space like that. I'd never experienced a space with no judgment, no advice, this capacity to be heard and witnessed and held and to be able to speak so truthfully. And it was just, I guess, soul shaking in a way. And it was a completely new, novel experience for me. And then I went off and went back to life. And things got more and more chaotic. I had a new baby, a business. I was navigating these changing relationships. And that little seed came back to me. And I just remembered being held in that way. And I decided to start holding circles. And so for me, it's been a real dedication to that journey of understanding the art and craft of circle holding, but also the architecture, the context, the practice and the process of circles, and these many different ways that we can bring them into our lives. So women's circles is something that I started with, and it's something that I am very, very committed to, but I also work on all these other areas of bringing them to our organizations, our institutions. How can we embrace that process anywhere that people gather in order to create better solutions, better remedies, and better communication and connection?
Yeah, I know. I'm imagining right now. First of all, I don't know what a red tent is. So you could maybe tell us what that is.
Yes, of course. Thank you. Sorry. So the red tent, actually, in terms of it's sort of an ancient practice and a modern movement, which is kind of what I say, the red tent movement is part of that movement. It rose out of a book by Anita Diamond called The Red Tent, which is actually a work of fiction. I highly recommend it. It's an incredible book for women to read. And from that, at little spots around the globe, people started to gather in circles. Women started to hold red tent circles. So they tend to be around the moon cycles, menstrual cycles, and that is really a global movement now. And the community that I was living in at the time, we actually built actual red tent with canvas and bamboo and all the works. And so that became a community red tent for the women in that place. And so there are these sort of different, I don't want to say ideologies, but there are these different ways to come to circle work, and red tents aren't for everybody, but it's quite a big part of the modern day circle movement.
Nice. I was imagining, you and circle work in a business setting, and how the seat of the circle and holding that container is so different from the usual male-centered business model of how people communicate. Like it seems almost antithetical to me of this sort of like posturing and getting your word in and and not really listening to something so utterly different.
Yes, and it is a process, and it's a learning to come into that space, because it's slow and it's gentle, and there's a lot of listening, and there's a lot of silence. And there's a lot of being present, and there isn't, obviously we all bring judgments and biases, sitting with our own discomfort, but being able to sit in the tension of places and allowing that to dissolve in a trusting of that co-created process, that whatever needs to come through, it's another one of my things, but we have to trust ourselves, we have to trust the participants, and we trust the process and allowing it. So there's no agenda. It's not like we have to get here and we have to reach this thing by this time. So it's a very, very different process. And most of us, and I speak for myself in the Western world, I'm living in the UK, and as a lawyer, as a former litigation lawyer, it is very different to the systems that we grew up in. Here, our schools are hierarchical, our justice system is adversarial, our parliamentary system is adversarial. We are being polarized again and again and again. You've got to pick a side. It's a lot of binary thinking. And so when you step over the threshold into circle, it's almost as if you step into a different dimension of time and space. And it's like, and I think, although it's not necessarily gender specific in my experience, women and those who identify as women really drop into that space. It's a remembering rather than it is a relearning, but it's like there's an ancient thread within us that knows we have gathered like this since time immemorial, and we it's a literal exhale. And I see it happen time and again. We're like, I'm home. And that was my experience in that first circle. I didn't know it, I didn't understand it, but I felt it.
Yeah.
And I carried that seed with me. Yeah.
It's like something deep, some deep wisdom gets touched and evoked. It's like, oh, where have you been? Thank God.
Yes. Yeah.
And I want more of this.
Yes, I want more of this. Yes.
I want more of this. Yeah. Right.
I'm always trying to encourage folk to get to one circle, with all the questions like, I don't know if that's really for me. And we have a lot of ideas about what it's like to gather, especially women gatherings. It's like, I'm not sure. Especially for people who've worked in corporate or have had these experiences of sister wounds, etc., it can be quite a big step even to step into circle. But then there's a recognition and this is, I can, yes, I want more of this. I want to experience this again.
And can you just explain what you mean by sister wounds? I think I know, but just in case.
Yes, of course. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So the term sister wounds is often used to describe the wounds that women have really inflicted upon one another. But there are many facets to that. So I sometimes use the term women's wounds. Womb wounds is another phrase that people will sometimes use, those of us who have wombs and who have had that experience through sexual trauma, through birthing trauma, all of those pieces, and also the witch wound. So I guess for those of us, again, with European ancestry and the witch hunts through Europe, which are often called a gendercide, because it was a vast majority of those who were killed and persecuted for witchcraft were women. Mm-hmm. And so there's all of these different strands of that come in together, which can sometimes be called sister wounds as a collective, and it taps into those collective, the witch wound, but also that women had to turn on one another in order to survive themselves. And then the more recent, I guess, more modern wounding of perhaps how we've treated one another in the workplace, perhaps how we've treated each other judgmentally about our own mothering decisions, birthing decisions, lifestyle decisions, and putting this again into the context of a patriarchal society where a lot of the ways that we gathered and connected and communed have been put into that space of, women gossiping or needing to align with the men in our lives in order to get ahead, needing to support a gender binary in order to feel part of something and to belong to something. So apologies, that wasn't a very succinct answer, but it's sort of, we say this word and you're right, it's then a complex range of feelings and emotions and wounds that we're carrying, and they often come to the surface when we step into circle, because they can, there's the space for them to come to the surface, but of course we're then confronted with being in these spaces. And that maybe the first thing that we find that stands in the way of being actually able to connect to each other. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, we've been so taught to, I think immediately of how we just even take in each other's bodies.
Yeah.
And we're always scoping out each other's bodies. Well, we've been trained so deeply to that, that there's not enough, and that you're competition, and to judge each other's, on a scale of 1 to 10, the way that we see yucky Trump doing and all that kind of yucky stuff. So yeah, that makes total sense to me. Thank you for that explanation. I'm curious why you wanted to be part of the Healing Sexual Trauma Summit.
Thank you. I think that's such a beautiful question, and I don't think I've ever been asked that on any summit I've done. I think that's a really gorgeous question, so thank you for asking me. When you reached out, I did take time to think about it and understand what I could offer, and that's not my area of expertise. It is an area of experience, but what I felt that I wanted to offer was this, what I see of circles as being able to provide a space where we can explore such matters and traumas within a safer, braver space, and that it's still not something that perhaps many, as many as I would like, are aware of, that this is an option. And it's a very interesting journey for me through the differences, for example, between therapy or counseling or other healing pathways, and being able to then come to circle and say, well, what does circle offer us, and how can this support us? And one of my guiding questions is, how can circles help? So that's why I wanted to take part, to offer perhaps some kind of answer to how can circles help in that healing journey.
Yeah, I feel like you've already given us so much to sort of sit with in terms of how circles can help. Just even what did you call it? Sister wounds?
Sister wounds, yeah.
Even this, that's such a big and powerful piece of our healing process. That deep internalization of a self-hatred that we then turn on people who have a womb like we do. It's so profound. So yeah, I mean, I'm so glad you're here and you totally belong here. And I'm so happy to have this be part of the offering of this summit for all the reasons you've already mentioned and the ones that we're about to learn about as well. All right, so you've sort of touched into this, but let's talk a little bit more about circling as an ancient tradition and a modern practice. And you were going to share something about the ancient roots of the process and why they're being so widely embraced now.
Yes, thank you. This is probably one of my favorite topics. So when I came to circles, I came as a European woman. I was living in Australia at the time, and as I explained, that first experience for me was a red tent circle. And so when I started to hold circles myself, it's very important to me to understand the lineage and the legacy of what it is that I am partaking in, what it is that I am doing, making sure I'm not engaging in cultural appropriation, etc. I was aware that there are living cultures who still engage with circles, and so I wanted to understand where what I was trying to do fitted into that wider context. And so that took me down a little research. And at the time, interestingly, just to say, I couldn't find anyone teaching it. There are now lots and lots of courses there, but when I started, there wasn't really anything that I could access and kind of how to do this. So I was trying to work it out on my own. Apart from that red tent movement, which again, there are now lots of training courses for that. So I started to go back to my love of reading and research and go, okay, where do circles fit in my own lineage as a European woman who can trace my lineage through Welsh, Scottish, Irish, English, back to the Celts? Where do they fit? And so that demonstrated to me that across cultures, humans have been gathering in circle from the beginning. So we have a lot of archaeological evidence of that. In Europe or in the UK, we don't have a lot of written evidence, etc., except through the myths and stories. But there is archaeological evidence that we've come together in circle, in community, for a very, very long time. And then, of course, when I expanded that to look at living cultures around the world who still gather in circle, I could see that there was an overlap here. We may have lost it within my cultural lineage, but it's definitely part of it. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to root anything that I taught and shared within that, just an understanding that it's not new, we're not recreating something, and that we don't need to steal from other cultures. So whatever our cultural lineage is, we can look to how circles fitted in there and get some idea. Mm-hmm. And then looking at that broad context of, okay, well, where are we today? What is the role of circles today? Why are we interested? Why are we stepping into the this is what I've been looking for? And so we've already touched on this a little bit, but reflecting on the systems that many of us, again, speaking from my own experience, but the systems that I grew up in, a British boarding school, a lawyer within a very adversarial justice system, a government that is a very adversarial system. I was a debater, which is you've got to argue your case till the end. And so exploring that wider context, that society that we're in, that patriarchal culture that is sort of often referred to as that dominant culture or the overculture, and seeing that circles offer us a viable alternative to start to explore a different way of being together. So it starts with that safer space of just being able to be heard and seen and not be told what to do, not be fixed, not be healed, not be saved by somebody else. There is so much in being able to simply share and speak and be witnessed and heard. And so that I want to honor the roots, but also ensure that our circles are meeting the moment that we're in, which is getting more and more complex day by day at the moment when we're recording this. And so how do we keep meeting that? And I think with anything, we have to honor our lineage, we have to honor the roots, and then we look at how we can make that how we can adapt it to the moments that we are facing, and whether that is in the historical or the political or the personal context, we can adapt those principles and that process to meet what we need. Does that help?
I hear you, and I see like this rebalancing occurring. Yeah. Sort of like the matriarchal lineage that where this used to be the standard way, and then it just got wiped out. And what did you call it? Gender side. you know,
Yes.
and it's sort of like, well, if we're going to be able to keep inhabiting this planet, here's something. It's like we've got to bring these ways, these practices, this energy back into how we are with ourselves and each other and this earth. Yeah. Beautiful. Thanks for sharing that. So so you've talked a little bit about this. And I'm wondering if there's anything more you want to add about the art of holding space, the art of holding safer, inclusive, and brave spaces, and what happens when we do, and how it differs from therapy, but is so healing.
Yeah, thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
One of the parts of this is we live in a cult. Again, this is a generalization, but the culture, which often refers to safe space, it's a term that's used quite often, but when you enter that space, it's not safe for everyone. So this was another exploration of mine, is what do we mean by safe space, and how are we actually guaranteeing safe space for people? And through various trainings to support me in creating more inclusive spaces, I learned very quickly that from a trauma-informed perspective as well, we can't guarantee safety. So what we can do is cultivate and deepen our capacity to create a safer space. So as space holders, really deepening into that art and craft of listening, of compassion, of awareness, of understanding when we're bringing people together, particularly around certain topics, that there's going to be activation points, there's going to be trigger points, there's going to be trauma that comes up, there's going to be wounds that are raw, and there's going to be a multitude of reactions to that. And so as the circle holder, we want to be able to sit and hold all of that. And that takes doing our own work so that we can also regulate our own nervous system. We can meet what comes up for us within that space, and also be able to be that grounded presence, which allows others in the circle to also meet what is coming up for them. And there are, we put in place guidelines and scaffolding in order to explain the process so people understand what is happening, and that there isn't going to be pats on the head and big hugs and all of that, we're going to hold this space together. It's co-created, but it's also co-held. It relies on each of us trusting one another in that space. And so creating safer spaces is really an acknowledgement of that. I can't guarantee it'll be safe for you, but I'm doing my damnedest to make sure that it is safer, and that we have an awareness, and that as the circle holder, I'm taking responsibility for what I can offer. And I think that is in my mind in terms of ethical, and that for me is a very ethical notion. We need to be very clear in our own capacities before we're entering to hold space for people who we're likely to bring up trauma and wounds and stories, etc. So deepening into that. And the idea of brave space was something that I meant to bring the quote actually with me, and I'm afraid I forgot to, but there's a beautiful quote about holding braver spaces. And I really cherish that idea. I think it's not because we have to be brave in a patriarchal masculine way. It's just that idea that even stepping into circle to share our deepest stories is so brave. And actually being willing to meet one another in that space is brave. And so if we can bring that sense of bravery, and we can bring that sense of compassion to one another, that journey of itself can open a healing pathway, which may be completely unexpected and without anybody else doing anything to you or for you. It's sitting with that and allowing the process to unfold. And inclusive is a very big, broad term. And when I'm approaching my circles, it comes really from two aspects. So first is that all of you is welcome. The circle is a symbol of wholeness. And so when we step into that, we don't leave any parts of ourselves out. Every part of us can find a place within that circle. And so some of those deepest wounds and traumas and shames and even embarrassments, or things that didn't feel that big until you step into circle and are suddenly like, oh, that's there. We find a place for that. It's all welcome. And then also inclusive in terms of just looking at who's coming to our circles. Are we opening in terms of people of color, abilities, disabilities, different gender expressions as well? And those are all things to explore in terms of who you're holding your circles for, but to have that, again, that awareness of who you're inviting in and who you have the capacity to hold the space for.
Yeah, all big things.
Yeah.
All big things. I have so many thoughts. I was in a circle recently, a healing circle. I live in a community, and it was a challenge because it was like a restoration circle, and there was hurt between parties. Do you hold circles in that kind of a way when there's hurt between people who are present in the circle?
Yes. So in terms of the circles that I currently hold, I tend to hold sharing circles and what I call discernment circles, but I'm involved with an organization who hold restorative justice circles. Mm-hmm. So bringing those principles of the circle process into navigating where a party is hurt and being able to give expression to all of those different aspects. And they are, again, that is a beautiful movement in its own right, I suppose, as a part of that wider circle movement that is happening. We're seeing those. I'm currently in the process actually of mapping organizations who are using restorative justice circles around the world with some colleagues, because it is such a powerful process. And just in terms of statistics, it's a much more helpful process than most of our justice systems. And so when we then bring that also into communities, it's a really amazing, not just concept, but embodied and integrated idea. But that's that, again, it takes a skilled circle holder or a skilled circle keeper who is able to hold that space and not dip into negotiation or mediation or resolution, and to actually be able to facilitate the circle process in its best form.
Yeah, it really takes some skill building to be able to do that. And like you said, doing your own work so that so that you can respond skillfully if you're triggered yourself in some way, because that can happen so quickly. And then suddenly the container is broken in some way. And we're human, so it's going to happen. But then how skillful can you be at noticing, naming, and giving yourself what you need to be able to come back and re-regulate the nervous system, as you mentioned before, to just come back and be there. It's really powerful stuff.
It is. And I'm always encouraging and asking those who, I think there are qualities of circle holders. I think there are qualities that we're looking for people who can hold those powerful, transformative and safer spaces, but also to remind ourselves that, as you said, we're humans, and to be human is to have experienced trauma. So we don't have to be perfect. We don't have to have healed everything within us. We don't have to not still be in counseling. We don't have to not still be grieving something. But I think we have a responsibility to be very self-aware of where we are on that journey. And so when things do come up for us in circle, be able to deal with that appropriately. And in some circles, that may be to share, this is what's happening for me at the moment. And in other spaces, it may be to be able to meet that within and then seek support outside. I always tell circle holders, or invite circle holders, I don't tell anyone anything, I invite you to have your own little black book that you can refer to, and that you can also refer others to when that's necessary, because we can have that incredible shared experience with circle, and we can still need additional support. We don't have to put everything on the circle. It's like putting everything on one relationship. You've got to fulfill everything. The circle is part of our community process. It's part of our healing process. It's part of our life, but it doesn't have to fulfill every need for every participant.
Right. Okay. I have one last thing that I want to cover with you or talk about, and it has to do with rewilding ourselves and our circles. I am in love with this word, which is new to me as I've been planning this summit. I just interviewed a beautiful woman yesterday, Nika Carley, and she's all about rewilding.
I look forward to that.
Yeah, so I'd love to hear from you about rewilding ourselves in our circles. What does it mean?
Yes, well, that's a really good question. What does that mean? Rewilding is such an interesting term, and I love it, and it's a term that I use. And just in the same way, when I go into these deep research places, I do that with rewilding as well. So I'm like, this is what I'm doing. I'm rewilding circles. And then you go off and you're like, wow, this can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. It has so many different contexts to it.
Yeah.
And so the context in which I'm using it when it comes to circles is firstly coming back to that invitation to ourselves as to releasing expectations on how we should be behaving in the society in which we are. So what does that take for us individually? And that can be so different. That can be to creating an altar that honors your wild woman. It can be connecting to the archetype of the wild woman and really understanding what she brings through for you. What are her capacities? How can you lean into her? How can she scaffold you in this world that we're currently in? To being out in the wilds and really reconnecting with the land that you're on. And that may be the land that you're born on, but that may not. That may be the land that is that you are seeking to belong to, and allowing that land to claim you. So I love to bring, for me, it's bringing all of those threads together. And then when it comes to our circles, this is a little, I have to be honest, this is a little bit contrived a little while ago, but I've really grown into it and I'm really loving it now. So I started to look at my own rewilding process, which was started with the wild woman archetype and then became very much about being on the land. And I started to look at circles and I thought, well, you know what, when we first step into a circle, it's a bit like stepping into the wilderness. We don't know what to expect. And it can be both terrifying and also deeply comforting. It's like we know we're home, we know we belong here on this land, and yet we may not actually understand it or recognize it. And so circles, rewilding our circles, is about cultivating that and being able to hold that. Yes, it's new and it may be weird. It may be scary, but it's also deeply nourishing, and we can learn how to do it. We can learn how the bird calls, we can learn the trees, we can learn the seasons, we can learn to name them rather than just having these generalizations. And the same about the circle process. We can really start to name that process of presence, of listening, of witnessing, of discomfort, of tension, of holding a paradox. We can start to name them and understand what they mean. So we with us. We don't just come to circle and go, well, that was great, bye. We take that with us, and then in our daily lives, we can meet that. We can meet that in the supermarket. We can meet that in our families. Not always perfectly, you know. Sometimes I can't draw on those capacities with my choices. But we can start to cultivate those qualities and those essences, and then those tendencies can come to the front rather than how we may have previously responded. And I think just spending time in nature and rewilding ourselves just through that, you know, more typical perhaps idea of it, of just being in nature and getting to know nature better, is we can learn to listen. Like one of the ways I really taught myself to deepen listening was last year when we were in lockdown here. I went out at dawn and listened to the dawn chorus because it was so much better because there was no traffic, and started to identify the different bird calls and to hear the conversations that are happening. And then I started to notice that when you're sitting under a tree and just tuning in, you're witnessing what is happening and you're truly present. You're not questioning whether the tree is right or wrong, or good or bad, or that it shouldn't drop its leaves because it's doing it in autumn. You know, there's a sort of quality about it that invites us into acceptance and to simply be present with what is. Now, of course, that's in the context of environmental damage and climate change, etc. So sometimes perhaps we are questioning, why are you dropping your leaves now? But it's the concept there of inviting us to learn, to be listening, to be the witness, to be present, and to move with those rhythms, those natural rhythms. And that is what happens in the circle process. And for most of us, that has been overridden in terms of my you know, my lineage, my culture, that has been overridden.
Mm-hmm.
We've almost been told to reject that. We've been told to reject our nature, reject our rhythms, reject the seasons, reject our feelings, reject it all, and kind of fit into something else. So that's that rewilding process for me. It's like literally getting back to our true raw nature. What is that? Yeah. And that through that connection with nature, and then we bring that back into circle.
I love it. And as you were talking, I was remembering, I've got this book that I've just written and is out, and it's called Naked, My Body Story. And my own, I didn't call it this, so now I have a word for what I was going through at the time. My own rewilding healing process happened so much in the woods.
Yes.
And I write about it in one of the chapters where I look at the trees and I'm like, are these trees all perfect?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Look at them. Like, they're all over the place. Just like us, you know? And yet, do we think that the forest is imperfect as it is? I mean, it was like this revelation, you know, that nature holds all of the wisdom that we need for our own healing process. And you just brought it right into the circle. So that's lovely.
And I just really, sorry, I just want to take that in. Nature holds all of the wisdom that we need for our own healing process. And that just, I could feel tears. Yes, thank you. That really resonated so deeply. And it's an area of my work that I am exploring more and more, and working with people who work in kind of ecotherapy and actual taking people out on wildness retreats for that process, and exploring, how do we take our circles out into the wild? You know, we can have them in woods, and now the lockdown's over, etc. But actually, let's do that. Let's take the circle into the wild
out there.
Well, I mean, let's have them in boardrooms, let's have them in community halls, but let's also go and sit on the land, and do that process supported by the land, supported by their ancestors, supported by our bodies, supported by that experience. So, note to self, start creating.
Write it down. Don't lose it.
I'm gonna capture that.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, Mitlé, it's been so lovely to talk to you. So wonderful. I'm so happy to meet you and to know about the work you do, and that you've shared it so generously with us. And you're also generously sharing a free gift. Do you want to tell us about that?
Thank you. Yes, thank you so much for having me. It was an absolute delight, and I hope that something that I've shared is helpful or useful. And so the free gift is a guided journey to meet the soul of your circle. So it's part of the process that I teach, which is that we're the human for our circles, and our circles have a spirit. And so we work in circle with the solar spirit of our circle and help us to therefore bring that through as the expression. So that it's a guided practice, a guided journey to go in and really commune with the spirit, the soul of your circle. For those who are stepping in or are interested in stepping into that role, it is one of those wonderful processes that takes you out of the cranial overthinking, I can't do this, I don't know what I'm doing, and allows you to connect with something at a deeper level, which is also, I think, part of that rewilding in terms of how we look to things, how we want to organize our gatherings.
Nice. You, a couple times in our interview, the connection's been off, and I think what you were saying was connecting to soul and spirit and bringing that in. And then you came back to it later, so I'm pretty sure that's what you said. Yeah.
Interesting to lose connection when you're talking about connection to soul.
But then it came back.
Good. Which I guess is that beautiful reflection of, yes, we connect in and we connect out, don't we? So that's part of that journey, part of that process and healing process.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Before we close, listeners, I hope you've enjoyed yourself. I know I have. Mitlé Southey. So wonderful to have you again. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.